Our lives have really warped into something else, huh? The world was like, hey, everybody, Trump is one hell of a drug, but what if I told you you could try pandemic? And everybody was like, and then several million Americans became anti vaxxers, which is pretty interesting. And then millions of people died all around the world, which is more horrifying than interesting. And now we have the excitement of a canceled billionaire cage match between two computer nerds who don't understand the fields they're in that well. This all sounds like bad fan fiction for a futuristic timeline, but it's the real deal. This is happening, and the list goes on and on and on, doesn't it? Housing crises with escalating rates, inflation, really just bourgeois gaslighting lingo for record corporate profits, right? We hear this inflation stuff all the time. It affecting everything from mortgages to deposits to massive costs of rent still rising, regardless of the ample presence of cheap and quality and affordable housing. Healthcare in America is still non-nationalized, existing as profit for business interests which don't care about their clients, only seeking to deny them as much treatment for as much money as possible. When doctors should give you help, the insurance is there to filter who can and cannot receive care the patient, client, absolutely needs, as anyone seeking any health care at all should be entirely allowed and protected to do so. Think otherwise, then who are you to say people's needs should be for profit? Because it's always been that way? People thought the same thing of the divine right of kings, but now, talk about a bygone era, right? Even more so, schools, churches, and even most public venues have become habitats of cultivating fear and suffering, thanks to mass firearm violence in America and its cousin, right-wing fascist terrorism. From college to preschool, long school hour days starting too early for most growing minds, filled with outdated teaching styles, weak and non-stimulating activities, led by underpaid and exhausted teachers carrying much of the workload for barking and ungrateful but also exhausted parents. Overworked doctors and nurses, underpaid staff, congested traffic with inefficient pathways, high turnover rates for customer service establishments like chain restaurants and grocery superstores. Teenagers have the least hope they've ever had. Suicide rates are climbing, and many of them are acting out in all kinds of ways. Defunct or non-existent transportation systems, crippling college costs and student debt. The list goes on and on. We've completed a substitution for our reality by projecting the digital world onto our tiny black mirrors and bright screens, feeding our minds with the content manipulated purposely to hijack your brain pathways. Microplastics, pollution, and climate change, police brutality, and even overall policing has skyrocketed with funds under a Democrat Party president. The Supreme Court, not that it was a moral entity in the first place, has been pulling back workers' rights and even revoking a woman's right to choose and control her own effing body. Congress legitimately has a McCarthy in a leadership position with the most stagnant and backwards American capitalist government arguably we've ever had. Trust in institutions is at the lowest, as maybe it should be. Wages have stagnated, and subsequently working-class Americans are enduring some of the worst economic conditions in the history of the United States. There is truly something wrong going on, and it's only getting worse. In the face of such oppressive conditions, without revolutionary energy and class analysis, people will fall into despair. You can see it now even. Whether it's a person deluding themselves into working another day with crossed fingers hoping for better pay, whether it's a person filled with resentment noticing the rising pain and suffering in not just themselves but also around them, and having those feelings invalidated by the superstructure's apologists at every turn, whether it's the apathetic waiting for it all to rot and collapse, or maybe you're like me, where you're starting to figure out the truth and you feel caught between radical optimism and depressed cynicism. What seems to be clear is the lack of solidarity and unity with workers, a common cause and common problem with all of this, a cross-cultural absence of connection, community, and support. And of course, this isn't new. We've all been separated and disconnected, poisoned by the Kool-Aid of hyper-individualism, especially for Americans, for too long. The long-lasting effects of consumerism, social media, toxic competition, and so many other forces has made its due. But we don't have to accept this. We never did. Even in the face of such awful conditions, we've never been more capable of change. The conditions we live in are a product of the wealthy elites and their control over, well, everything. They are an existential threat to the health of humanity, regularly capitalizing on an ever-abused planet, overworked people, and mass exploitation, of all kinds. They have built a world where we feel too encumbered by its weight to feel we can actually change things. The entire timeline of human history is a history of change. Our every single day, regardless of your perspective on free will, we make decisions to orient some action and therefore an output from the world. Marxists refer to this as labor, but it is essentially the action of doing or to do, right? That pursuit inherently seeks something that it doesn't have, because it is a pursuit of addition. It wishes to make something, even if needing to take something to make it. It is a pursuit of change, to seek a difference in the world, to better it than the state it was in before. This is the essence of labor. It's the fundamental attribute of the action of doing, and all of our labor and our actions of doing have created a slave world where we abide by oppressive conditions, brutalized by tyrants, held down by the authoritarianism of awful economic conditions. We are capable of unifying our labor. We do not have to live this way. We don't have to accept these awful conditions slowly draining our souls away. This oppressive system living over us isn't the end, and it doesn't define us. It isn't total in time. It's merely a structural obstruction, easily overcome by the unity of working people. We have never needed to accept this, and the perception that we must accept it because it's just the way things are is not only wrong, but historically illiterate. These conditions are literally a product of change, of constantly changing conditions. As I've brought up before, conservatism is the inability to perceive the change over time because things are the way they are. They must be that way for a reason, not just any reason, but the right reasons. But all I have seen and experienced is the opposite. Conservatives are very rigid, very empty. They don't have the arguments to back up their points. They hide behind the aesthetics of logic and reason to justify their fallacious, broken, and unsustainable ideology. Liberals aren't much different, capable of smelling the need for change, but not strong enough to admit the level it's needed. The planet's dying. Wealth inequality is the highest it's ever been. You all know, so many of you know, we cannot keep this up. So in the face of the most necessary time to stand up, in a time where we must be asking and even demanding of our own selves and each other for better, for much more, do we say we can't do it? Do we say to ourselves that we're not capable of setting aside our differences or even radically accepting them? Are we truly too burnt out to seek the comfort and support we naturally have with the community of us all? Do we really believe we deserve to accept this? Is it even healthy or okay for us to accept it for other people, let alone ourselves? Don't we owe it to ourselves to actually care about one another, to unify and organize a more collective unit, to change how we live on a mass level? I don't think so. I think we deserve better. I think we're capable of better. I believe we have the capacity, the intelligence, the integrity, the decency, the humanity to actually push us all and each other to have these difficult conversations, to have our perspectives be heard and acknowledged, and to admit that our problems are legitimate and also common. There's no shame or self-lessening that occurs when we bring up these issues. If anything, all it shows is our ability to believe we deserve better for ourselves and each other, which seems to be the essence of pursuits like therapy or enlightenment. So why is common unity and mutual aid in a socialist living style, a place where the average person has a say in what they can do and how and why, that much of a far-fetched idea? To me, it seems inevitable. To me, I see people who are tired and hurting and overworked who wish for better and look for it in the wrong places because they don't think we can work on this together. And how is that not the apex of cognitive dissonance? As if the only reason any of us are here, the only reason we can do anything in this world is because we work together. We've lost the plot, and we don't need to stay lost forever. Perhaps it's time for change. Perhaps it's time for a mass movement, for a revolution. What do you think? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching and listening. Please take care. I wish you all very well. Peace.